This is a response to Hasan Piker, who very recently I came into contact with a clip that I thought was interesting and I wanted to commentate on it. So here we go. Let's take a look.
Yes, a real job can be gruesome. A real job can make you very tired, but a real job doesn't suck the soul out of you. You know what I mean? In the same way that 9 hours of streaming absolutely will.
A real job does suck the soul out of you. A real job, in many instances, is a miserable, dehumanizing experience, especially in the United States of America. I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. If you look into Hasan Piker's background, he was born a rich kid. He was the son of a CEO of a major Fortune 500 company. He grew up, you know, riding horses and, you know, playing friggin', you know, polo and shit. And he's Cenk Uyghur's nephew, I believe. And now he makes his money streaming. He has a huge audience. He makes money hand over fist. He is quite well compensated for his work. Now, I don't want this to come across like I am saying to you that you cannot enjoy Hasan Piker's content. I am not meaning to come across as though, you know, he's, you know, all bad and every opinion he's ever had is bad or whatever. In fact, when Hasan Piker was being attacked for talking to that Houthi pirate, and a lot of people were saying that that was some sort of outrage, I was on his side. I never publicly stated I was on his side because I didn't feel like dealing with it, but I was on his side. And I was on his side because I believe that, you know, if we're going to have a sort of open policy in the United States of these Houthi pirates must be stopped and they have to be killed and we have to bomb their bases and, you know, all this stuff, then we should know who they are. And so I think it was the right thing to do to somewhat humanize the Houthi pirate guy. And so I supported what Hasan Piker did there. And if you don't support it, then whatever, I don't care. But as far as this shit goes, this to me is kind of outrageous because I think it's very silly to compare what a streamer does and what a normal person does for a few different reasons. But before we get too far into it, when I made a negative comment about the clip you just saw on Twitter, I was given this other clip that's supposed to provide further context. So before we delve into this too much, I want to take a look at this second clip that provides a little bit more context into what Hasan meant when he said that. And let's just jump into that really quick, and we'll respond after we take a look. Hey, if you like this clip, you might like the full stream, which I do every Sunday, more or less, over on the Pessimist Productions Patreon, link down below. Thank you kindly.
No. Social battery wise, unless you're in retail, fucking retail, it's very different. You're out of touch. I'm gonna die, dude. There's motherfuckers who are accountants in here and they're misunderstanding what I'm saying. A real job does not expend your social battery in the same fucking way as someone who did a sales job, a real job. Okay. I'm telling you, as someone who did both, 9 hours of constant performance and people pleasing taps you out from social scenarios. After 9 hours of that, I could probably do fucking physical labor. It would not bother me, but I can't fucking do more social shit. That's my point. There are obviously real jobs out there that are good comparisons. Service sector, people pleasing jobs would be very similar. Those are like, I think, customer service type shit. But like if you're an accountant or if you're even like in sales, my interactions with clients was limited, way more limited than like constantly having to do this for 9 hours with like a back and forth interaction for 9 hours. That's what like sucks your social battery and you just tap out after it. You give presentations for your job, right? Imagine giving a presentation for 9 hours straight. It's like after a while you would be like, I don't want to talk ever again.
Okay. So now that we have a fuller version of the context, let's dive right into it. So, first of all, there are plenty of other jobs that drain your social battery every bit as much as streaming. And in fact, more so, because if you're in customer service, if you're in retail, if you're a waiter or waitress, if you are a customer service job, if you are a call center job, not only do you have to talk to people for roughly the same amount of time as Hasan does, but you're way less free to be yourself in those instances. So if Hasan gets an angry chatter coming at him, he can call that person a moron. He can block that person. He can say, "Fuck you, get out of my fucking life, you piece of shit." And he can go on a tear. He can go on a rampage. And we've seen, streamers do that. A person who's working a customer service job cannot talk back to the person that's on the other end of the phone. They cannot, curse out the customer that's being a, loathsome scumbag to them and treating them like garbage. So it's way more of a fake, constant smiley thing. And he talks about what he does as people pleasing, but like, you as an entertainer are free to not always be pleasing to people. You can be other ways. You can challenge those people. You can argue with those people. You can disagree with those people. You're free to take any other number of social tacts. You do not just have to be like, "Hey guys, it's me, People McPleaserton." And, the clip we just watched bears that out because, you're free to argue with the chat. You're free to disagree with the chat. You're free to call the chat stupid. You're free to show frustration with them. You're free to do a number of things that your typical customer service person or wait staff person or all those other people who have just as socially draining jobs are not free to do whatsoever. Second of all, those people have to go to that job whether they feel up to it or not. A typical person cannot just make their own schedule the way that someone like Hasan Piker can do. Hasan Piker can decide, "I'm not feeling up to streaming today. I'm just not going to." He can take a day off. He can take a week off. He could take a month off. He could probably take a year off if he really wanted to. So there's always this freedom of like, yeah, I don't have to do this right now. I can go off and do some other thing that normal people simply do not have. Third of all, and most obviously of all, the compensation that he gets for his profession is absolutely cataclysmically dwarfs what your average waiter or waitress would get, what your average customer service person would get. I mean, he probably makes as like he shows up on a stream and opens his mouth and says 3 sentences, and he's probably already surpassed the daily pay of the people he's comparing himself to. So this just kind of strikes to me as rich kid pretending to be socialist on the internet for money. Now, when I say pretending to be socialist, I'm sure that he legitimately holds the views that he espouses and stuff like that. I'm being a little bit overly dismissive, maybe. But what I am saying is that this strikes me as being insanely out of touch with what working people in this country actually experience, because it's something he's never genuinely experienced. Maybe he's held a menial job at some point, but he probably got to go back to his mansion afterwards because, like I said, his daddy was rich. His daddy was rich. His uncle is rich. He's rich. They don't have to worry about the concerns that ordinary, everyday American people working 9-to-5 jobs have to worry about. And so this stuff kind of just smacks to me of artifice and bullshit. And, I am saying this, by the way, not from the vantage point of some great, American, working man or something. I have had very limited interactions with the workplace that I'm referring to here. But I know enough to know that what I do is easier by far. Does streaming constantly drain social battery? Obviously it does. I'm not going to lie to you and say otherwise. I'm not going to say that there's, what he's saying is without merit. But there are so many people who are in so much worse positions than streamer. And even at the level that I'm doing it at, where I am making a tiny little fraction of the, money that Hasan Piker is making doing this. Even at my level, I would never deign for a second to say that what I am doing here is more difficult than what a customer service person has to do, or what a waiter or waitress has to do, or what a retail worker has to do. This is far easier, far more rewarding. And even if it's not as lucrative as what Hasan's doing, it's still, even at this level, more lucrative. In fact, even some of the lowest tier streamers out there, you know, the lowest tier that have any sort of recognition whatsoever, I mean, are probably doing better, you know, as in direct correlation of work time put in to money accumulated, are probably doing better than the average person who's just out there working a real job, quote unquote. Now, that being said, I do not like it when people say that what I do and what Hasan does and what Vosh does and what whoever else is out there streaming does. I hate when people say that that's not work, because it is work, but, you know, it's comparatively easier work. And, you know, you have to have a certain skill set to do it. And you have to have a certain sort of, I don't know, ability to connect with an audience, a certain degree of charisma maybe. But that being said, it's not the same thing as working retail. It's not even close. And I think to compare yourself to someone who's doing those kinds of jobs and to say, oh, well, my job is actually way more draining and worse, I think shows a tremendous inability to connect with like ordinary working people. Now, that being said, apparently I'm wrong, because a number of people do like to tune in to Hasan's streams and watch them. And I assume that many of those people are working class people. So overall, I guess it's not affecting what he can do in terms of his numbers and his performance. But I really don't understand how anyone would let that slide. Because if I was working a miserable, you know, soul draining 9 to 5 sort of shit, and some, you know, rich streamer came and said, what I'm doing is actually way harder, dude, I would be like, well, fuck you then. I am done with you. So I don't understand why anyone would have any other reaction than that. But hey, you know, it's up to you who you watch. And like I said, I'm not trying to convince anyone not to watch Hasan. If you think that he's like brings up valid points and makes good arguments and, you know, spotlights interesting things, then by all means, continue to watch. I'm just saying, I personally don't understand why you would, given the attitude he just expressed, at least unless he's able to put forth some sort of like, hey, guys, sorry about that. That was a really dumb shit take from me. But whatever. I still think he's cool. I mean, maybe he is. And I say this with such a limited knowledge of the guy. I was not even confident that I knew his last name, honestly. So, you know, what do I really know about this? But to me, it was just like, man, that's such a strange thing to say in his position. Especially, you know, living so large, so high on the hog, you know, you'd think that like, even if there was like an ability of one-to-one comparison in every other way, like the fact that he is getting compensated so handsomely for what he does, that alone makes a tremendous amount of difference, right? Like if the average retail worker was making the same amount of money as him, I don't think that retail would be the level of stressful that it is for people. I think it'd be like, yeah, the job kind of has its like ups and downs, but hey, you know, pays really well. And it doesn't actually pay really well. It pays really shit. It's like a miserable soul draining job that you get very little compensation for. People are mad they can't have an easier gig because they're not good at it, full stop. It's not harder, but it takes talent. We've seen this attitude towards creatives forever, though. Novelists, musicians, etc., all bemoan for not having to break their backs. It's the jealousy of the unremarkable, nothing more. I think that there are plenty of people out there who are waiters, waitresses, call center workers, customer service people, etc., that have plenty of talent, plenty of ability to, I mean, I like the most entertaining, funny, charismatic people I've ever met have not been streamers and YouTubers. They've been construction workers and waiters and waitresses and, you know, so on and so forth. So the idea that they simply lack the talent, I think, is not true. I think what is true is that Hasan Piker had a tremendous amount of advantages that ordinary people don't. Coming from an extraordinarily rich family, having a well-connected uncle, those sorts of things are extraordinarily helpful. Even if you do have natural talent, which I'm not denying he does, that's some stuff that's going to help that talent along. It's going to help nurture it in a way that, someone who's like struggling to make ends meet is not going to necessarily be able to do.